In January 2001, while the wreckage of the dot-com crash was still cooling, a Taiwanese immigrant working out of a low-slung commercial building in the city of Industry, California, registered a company with a strange name. He called it Newegg. Not because he sold eggs, because the egg is a symbol of birth, of unlimited potential, and he believed that e-commerce still had a future at the exact moment the rest of the industry was writing its obituary. His name was Fred Chang, and within 4 years, his online store would cross $1 billion in annual sales. Within 2 decades, it would be publicly traded and briefly valued at more than $7 billion. Today, Newegg's active customers have fallen from 4.7 million to roughly 1.1 million. Revenue has declined every year since 2021, and the man who controls 53% of its shares was detained by Chinese anti-corruption authorities in January of this year. This is the story of the website that every PC builder in America once trusted with their build list, and the series of decisions that made them stop. You're watching Tech District, where we take apart the companies that built the PC world, down to the warehouse floor and the boardroom where they lost it. If that is your kind of story, subscribe and hit like. Fred Chang was born in Taiwan in 1957. He studied applied mathematics at Chinese Cultural University, and sometime in the 1980s, he immigrated to the United States. He did not arrive with a startup pitch or a venture capital contact sheet. He landed in Southern California and went to work in technology distribution, including a stint at Ingram Micro, one of the largest wholesale distributors of computing products in the country. It was grunt work, logistics, inventory management, warehousing, figuring out how to move 10,000 units of a product from a port in Long Beach to a distributor in the Midwest without losing money on the freight. But it taught him something that most dot-com founders of the era never learned. He understood the physical pipeline. He knew how a motherboard got from a factory in Taipei to a shelf in Whittier, California, and he knew what every step in that chain cost down to the penny. In 1990, Chang founded ABS Computer Technologies, a mail-order company based in Whittier that sold custom-built PCs and gaming systems. ABS was a catalog business, rooted in the old world of print ads in the back pages of Computer Shopper magazine and orders taken over the phone. You called a number, described what you wanted, negotiated a price, and someone in a warehouse assembled a tower from off-the-shelf components, tested it, boxed it, and shipped it to your door. It was not elegant, but for the 90s PC market, it was a functioning business model, and it kept the lights on and the warehouse humming for a full decade. But Chang was paying attention to his customers, not just their orders, but their questions. And what he noticed was a shift that most retailers in the space were too slow to recognize. Buyers were no longer content to let someone else pick their components. They wanted to choose the processor, the graphics card, the case, the power supply. They wanted to build the machine themselves. The do-it-yourself PC building community was exploding in the late 90s, fueled by online forums like AnandTech and HardOCP, by falling component prices driven by fierce competition between Intel and AMD, and by a generation of users who had grown up tinkering with their family's Compaq or Gateway and now wanted something faster, something they had put together with their own hands. The problem was that in the year 2000, there was no good place to do that online. Amazon sold books and was just beginning to experiment with electronics. The specialist PC parts retailers were mostly brick-and-mortar shops or bare-bones websites with search tools that returned noise. A search for motherboard might show you 600 results with no way to filter by socket type, chipset, or form factor. Chang saw the gap clearly. Enthusiasts wanted parts, not finished products, and they wanted to buy them from someone who understood what the parts actually did. So in January 2001, at the lowest point for e-commerce confidence in a generation, Chang launched Newegg out of the city of Industry with roughly $100,000 in seed capital. The timing was, on paper, among the worst in the history of American retail. Pets.com had collapsed months earlier, its sock puppet mascot already a symbol of dot-com excess. Webvan had burned through over $1 billion, and was weeks from liquidation. Cosmo.com was gone. eToys was gone. The Nasdaq had lost nearly 80% of its peak value. Sandhill Road venture firms that had been writing seven-figure checks to any Stanford dropout with a domain name were suddenly returning calls from limited partners who wanted their money back. The very phrase e-commerce had become something close to a punchline in the business press. But Chang was not building a dot-com fantasy fueled by marketing spend and loss leader pricing. He was building an online version of the parts counter at a local computer shop, a place where a person who knew the difference between DDR and DDR2 could find exactly the right stick of RAM without scrolling past dog food and garden hoses. The site launched with a focus so narrow it bordered on stubbornness. PC components for do-it-yourself builders. Detailed product specifications on every listing, not marketing paragraphs, but actual technical data sheets with pin counts and voltage ratings and supported memory configurations. Customer reviews written by people who had actually installed the hardware and could tell you whether the heatsink clearance was tight in a mid-tower case or whether the BIOS needed a flash before it would recognize a newer CPU. Competitive pricing made possible by the lean supply chain knowledge Chang had spent a decade acquiring at ABS and Ingram Micro. Newegg was profitable from its first year of operation. By 2004, annual sales crossed $1 billion. By 2005, Internet Retailer magazine named it one of the top 10 online retailers in America. The egg had hatched. The growth attracted outside capital. In 2005, New York-based venture capital firm Insight Venture Partners invested $20 million, becoming Newegg's largest outside shareholder. Revenue climbed to $2.1 billion by 2008, then to $2.3 billion in 2009. In September 2009, Newegg filed for a $175 million initial public offering managed by J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Citi. The prospectus told the story of a company that had been profitable every single year since its founding, a claim almost no e-commerce company of that era could make. But the IPO never happened. The filing sat for nearly 2 years without a meaningful update. In June 2011, Newegg formally withdrew it. General Counsel Li Cheng cited a desire to evaluate the full range of various strategic options. The translation was less elegant. The margins were thin, competition from Amazon was intensifying by the quarter, and institutional investors were not convinced that a specialist PC parts retailer could sustain growth against a company that was willing to lose money on every category until it owned the entire market. Internally, the company was churning through leadership. Fred Chang had stepped down as CEO and chairman in August 2008 and was replaced by Tally Liu, a finance executive from the newspaper industry. Liu lasted roughly 2 years. By August 2010, he was gone, and Chang was back in the CEO chair. This is where the story takes a turn that has nothing to do with semiconductors or stock prices. It is the story of a lawyer named Li Cheng, who turned Newegg into the most feared defendant in patent litigation. Cheng joined as general counsel in 2005 with a degree from Harvard College and a law degree from UC Berkeley. He was a corporate attorney by training, the kind of lawyer whose stated professional goal was to never see the inside of a courtroom. But when he arrived at Newegg, patent infringement lawsuits were already stacking up on his desk. The company did not manufacture anything. It was a reseller. The suits bewildered him at first, and then he understood. Patent trolls, formerly known as non-practicing entities, were companies that did not build products but acquired patents for the sole purpose of extracting settlements. The pitch was always the same. It will cost you $2 to $6 million to fight this in court. We are only asking for $3 million. Pay us, and we will go away. Most companies paid. Amazon paid. CDW paid. Zappos paid. The math favored settlement every time. Li Cheng refused. He made it Newegg's policy to never settle with a patent troll. Not once. Not ever. He found small law firms willing to work on alternative fee arrangements. He moved cases out of the Eastern District of Texas, a jurisdiction notorious for favoring plaintiffs, and into California courts where trolls had far less advantage. And he won. Newegg took on Sovereign Software over a shopping cart patent that had already extracted millions from Amazon, CDW, and Zappos. Newegg fought the case through trial and appeal and invalidated the patent entirely, saving every online retailer from paying the toll. Cheng beat TQP Development after years of litigation over an encryption patent, winning on post-trial motions after an initial jury loss. He joined forces with Google to create the LOT network, a collective defense agreement designed to prevent patent privateering. He was named one of America's 50 outstanding general counsel by the National Law Journal in both 2014 and 2016. He testified before the United States House of Representatives and the Senate. Patent trolls began dropping their cases the moment they discovered a Newegg subsidiary was the defendant. "We actually haven't lost a case of any kind after appeal since 2006, Cheng said. He became, to the tech community, something close to a folk hero. The lawyer who fought when everyone else wrote the check. But while the legal victories kept Newegg's name in the press, the company itself had built something that no court ruling could replicate. Something that existed entirely in the relationship between the website and the people who used it. The Newegg website at its peak was not just a store. It was a workshop, a reference library, and a community hall compressed into a single browser tab. If you built a PC anytime between 2003 and 2015, you almost certainly used it, probably with half a dozen other tabs open to AnandTech or Tom's Hardware or Reddit's Build a PC subreddit, where someone was walking you through which parts to pick and which to avoid. Newegg was the place where the advice turned into action, where the forum post became a shopping cart. The filtering system was the product. At a time when searching for a motherboard on Amazon returned a disorganized wall of results, Newegg let you narrow 10,000 options down to 3 by socket type: chipset, form factor, price range, brand, and feature set, all from a sidebar on a single page. Every listing carried full specifications, not marketing copy. Actual pin counts, voltage ratings, supported memory speeds, BIOS revision histories, and compatibility notes. Customer reviews ran deep, with photos of completed builds, real benchmark numbers, and warnings about specific board revisions that had known issues. This was not a store designed for someone buying a laptop charger. It was designed for people who knew what they were looking for, and for the people who were about to learn. The combo deals were legendary among builders. Newegg would bundle a processor with a compatible motherboard at a discount no competitor matched, sometimes $30 or $40 below what the parts cost individually. For a first-time builder working with a $700 budget, trying to fit a decent graphics card into a build that also needed a case, a power supply, and a monitor. That combo deal was the difference between a system that posted on the first try and a pile of incompatible parts that sat in a closet. Shipping was fast, often arriving in 2 days. The return policy was generous. Customer service answered the phone, and the person on the other end usually understood what a Northbridge was. In 2004, Newegg launched Rosewill, its private label brand. Cases, power supplies, keyboards, cables, and peripherals. Budget-friendly hardware aimed at the same enthusiast already browsing the site for an Asus motherboard or a Corsair memory kit. A Rosewill case was not glamorous. Nobody posted a photo of one on a forum to brag about their setup. But it was $40. It fit a standard ATX motherboard, the cable management was passable, and it showed up in 2 days with free shipping. For a generation of builders, a Rosewill case was the shell of their first working machine. The brand survived not on prestige, but on being present at the exact moment someone needed an affordable enclosure to finish a build. At its peak, Newegg claimed a market share as high as 40% in select electronic component categories. It shipped over 55,000 packages a day from warehouses across North America, with 91% arriving within 2 business days. 4.7 million active customers. The egg rating system, where products earned between 1 and 5 eggs instead of stars, was a small design choice that became a cultural signature. Nobody confused a Newegg review with an Amazon review. The audience was different. The expectations were different. The trust was earned differently. If you searched for a power supply on Amazon, you got sponsored results, irrelevant accessories, and reviews from people who did not know what a modular cable was. If you searched on Newegg, you got wattage, efficiency rating, 80+ certification level, rail configuration, and 100 reviews from people who could tell you whether the fan noise was acceptable at full load. That difference was not an accident. It was a choice, made daily, to serve a specific audience rather than chase every possible customer. But inside the golden age, the cracks were forming. Newegg began expanding beyond its core. Newegg Mall launched in 2008, a marketplace for apparel, home goods, and sporting equipment. International storefronts followed. The third-party marketplace grew, letting sellers outside Newegg's direct control list products on the platform. The company that had won by being the best at one thing was slowly trying to become adequate at everything, and then it sold itself. In September 2016, Hangzhou Liaison Interactive Information Technology, a Chinese conglomerate based in Hangzhou, acquired a 55.7% stake in Newegg for approximately $263 million. Newegg became a subsidiary. Liaison has a track record of investing in companies and keeping management in place. The company assured its community, "It will be business as usual." The promise was international expansion, virtual reality, esports. The same month the acquisition was reported, Li Cheng left. 11 years at Newegg, dozens of patent troll victories, 2 National Law Journal Awards for Outstanding General Counsel. Testimony before the United States House and Senate on patent reform, and he walked out the door to become Chief Operating Officer of Gibson Brands, the guitar manufacturer in Nashville. "One of the downsides of that success is that people stopped suing us," Chung explained when asked why he was leaving. He said he was looking for a new challenge. But the timing cut deeper than the quote suggested. The man who had become the public conscience of Newegg, the person most associated with the company's willingness to fight on principle, rather than take the easy settlement check, departed in the same window that a holding company in Hangzhou took control of the board. Nobody at Newegg said the two events were connected. Nobody had to. By June 2017, Liaison Interactive increased its stake to nearly 94%, with an additional investment of more than $179 million. Fred Chang remained on the board, but his personal equity had been diluted to single-digit percentages. In 2019, he handed the CEO title to Anthony Chow, the company that builders had trusted because it felt like one of them, because it fought patent trolls on principle and employed people who understood the difference between a 650-watt and an 850-watt power supply, now answered to shareholders in a different country who had entered the e-commerce business through mobile software and had no particular history with PC hardware culture. The pandemic obscured the consequences for 2 full years. In 2020 and 2021, the world went home. Remote work drove a surge in PC sales that no analyst had predicted. The global semiconductor shortage, fueled by factory shutdowns, surging demand, and the explosion of cryptocurrency mining, turned graphics cards into speculative commodities. An NVIDIA card with a retail price of $500 was reselling on the secondary market for $1,200. People were camping digital checkout queues the way previous generations had camped outside department stores on Black Friday. Newegg was perfectly positioned to catch the wave. Revenue climbed to $2.12 billion in 2020, and then to $2.38 billion in 2021, the highest in the company's history. In May 2021, Newegg completed a reverse merger with Lianluo Smart Limited, a Beijing-based special-purpose acquisition company, and began trading on the Nasdaq under the ticker Newegg. The initial valuation was roughly $880 million. Then, the meme stock frenzy, the same retail trader phenomenon that had sent GameStop and AMC into the stratosphere earlier that year, found Newegg. In early July 2021, Newegg's shares went from roughly $10 to 79.07 on July 7th, a surge of nearly 700% in 6 trading days on no fundamental news. By mid-August, the stock had crashed back to $18. The meme traders moved on to the next target. The operational business was left behind, carrying a public market valuation that bore no stable relationship to its revenue or profits. When remote work retreated and GPU supplies normalized through 2022, the structural decline that the pandemic had hidden was fully exposed. Revenue fell to $1.72 billion in 2022, a drop of nearly 28%. Then $1.50 billion in 2023. Then $1.24 billion in 2024. 4 consecutive years of contraction, each steeper than the last, while the broader global e-commerce market continued to grow. The problem was not the industry. The problem was Newegg. The moment the community's trust finally broke had a name. In late January 2022, Steve Burke, editor-in-chief of Gamers Nexus, purchased a $500 open-box Gigabyte Z490 motherboard from Newegg. His team decided the board was not needed and initiated a return without ever opening the shipping box. Newegg rejected the return, claiming customer-caused damage to the CPU socket pins. Burke pointed out on camera that the box had never been opened. Newegg changed its story, claiming thermal paste had been found on the board. Then, Burke discovered something damning. Inside the packaging was a handwritten RMA ticket from Gigabyte, showing that Newegg had previously sent the board to the manufacturer for repair. Gigabyte returned it unfixed. Newegg relabeled it Open Box and shipped it to Burke, knowing it was defective. When he tried to return it, they blamed him. The first Gamers Nexus video, titled "Newegg Scammed Us," went viral within hours. The follow-up video, which documented the RMA ticket evidence and Newegg's contradictory responses, pushed the combined view count past 2 million in the first week. Reddit threads about the scandal hit the front page. Windows Central reported being contacted directly by other affected customers. The community was not just angry, it was organized. Dozens of Newegg buyers came forward with near-identical stories. Returns denied for damage they had not caused. Refurbished products shipped as new, customer service representatives who followed scripts rather than solving problems. Newegg issued an apology on Twitter. It called the incidents unintentional process errors and isolated incidents. It changed its open box return policy, first only for motherboards and CPUs, then under continued pressure from Burke and the community, for all open box product categories. It created a new escalation email address for unresolved returns. The policy changes were real. But the trust that had taken 2 decades of 5-egg reviews and combo deals and 2-day shipping to build fractured in a single week of documented evidence on YouTube. You can read the whole incident 2 ways. Newegg says it was a process failure, a small number of returns that slipped through inspection. The community says this is what happens when the people who cared about quality leave and the cost cutters take over. Honest history holds both readings at once, but the documented record shows a company whose internal controls had deteriorated to the point where a known defective product was resold to a customer. And when that customer noticed, the company blamed him rather than fix the problem. Whether that was negligence or indifference, the outcome for the brand was the same. The financial slide accelerated after the scandal. Net losses reached $59 million in 2023 and $43.3 million in 2024. Active customers dropped from 4.7 million at the pandemic peak to roughly 2.5 million by the end of 2023, then fell further to approximately 1.1 million. The repeat purchase rate, the percentage of active customers who came back for a second order within 12 months, declined from 31.9% to 29.2%. Average order value fell from $411 to $379. Every metric that measured whether the community still trusted the store was pointing in the same direction. In April 2025, Newegg executed a 1-for-20 reverse stock split. This was not a sign of strength. It was a survival measure. The share price had fallen so low that the company risked being delisted from the Nasdaq for failing to meet the exchange's minimum price threshold. The reverse split consolidated 20 shares into one, artificially boosting the per-share price, while changing nothing about the underlying value of the business. Meme traders inflated the stock again that summer, from roughly $350 to a peak of $128 in mid-August 2025, driven by Newegg's association with NVIDIA GPUs, its gaming retail cachet, and a low-float share structure that made the stock a perfect short-squeeze target. By early 2026, it had collapsed back below 50. The operational reality beneath the ticker had not changed. The company had not turned a profit in 5 consecutive years. In January 2026, Newegg disclosed that Jitao He, chairman of its board and CEO of Liaison Interactive, the holder of 53% of the company's shares, had been detained by the Hebei Prefecture Supervisory Commission, China's anti-corruption authority. He had pledged all of his equity as collateral for loans totaling at least $190 million in default. The stock dropped 17.7% in a single day. Multiple law firms announced securities fraud investigations. The detention was lifted in February. The governance questions were not. In June 2026, Newegg filed a $250 million mixed securities shelf offering with the SEC. Newegg is not dead. That needs to be said plainly, because the narrative arc of decline can make a company sound like a ghost when it is still shipping packages every morning from warehouses in California and New Jersey. In the first half of 2025, revenue rose 12.6% year over year to $685.7 million, driven by demand for new NVIDIA RTX 50 series and AMD Radeon RX 9000 series graphics cards, the kind of product cycle that has always been Newegg's lifeblood. Adjusted EBITDA turned positive at $11.3 million, a meaningful reversal from the prior year's operating losses. In August 2025, the company launched the Newegg Gamer Community, a forum and social platform built directly into the website for builders and gamers to share completed configurations, troubleshoot problems, compare benchmarks, and talk hardware without the noise of a general-purpose social network. Fred Chang returned as chairman and CEO. The product catalog still runs deep. The site still ships to more than 70 countries. The company is wounded, smaller, and distrusted by many of the people who once loved it. But it is not gone. And in the forums and the Reddit threads and the comment sections of hardware channels, people still talk about Newegg the way you talk about a restaurant that used to be your favorite before the owner sold it and changed the menu. They remember the combo deals, the first graphics card they ordered, the tracking number they refreshed every 4 hours. The afternoon the box arrived, and they cleared the kitchen table and spent 6 hours with a Phillips head screwdriver and an anti-static wristband building a machine that posted on the first try. They remember the egg ratings and the feeling of reading a 5-egg review from someone whose build matched theirs exactly. They remember a time when the search filters were so precise that 3 clicks on a sidebar could find the exact stick of DDR3 for a board they had bought 6 years earlier, a part that no other retailer even stocked anymore. They remember the free shipping thresholds, the shell-shocker daily deals that refreshed at midnight Pacific, the way the checkout process was fast and clean, because the site was not trying to sell them a subscription or a credit card or an extended warranty disguised as insurance. Those memories are the evidence. The machines built with Newegg parts still boot. The Rosewill cases still sit under desks in dorm rooms and home offices, their side panels slightly warm. That is the user's verdict, and it is the only one that endures. The name. Newegg. Fred Chang chose it in January 2001 because the egg is a symbol of birth, of potential, of something that has not yet become what it will be. He picked it at the lowest moment for e-commerce in a generation, and it carried the company through a billion-dollar rise, a Chinese acquisition, a meme stock frenzy, a scandal on YouTube, and a chairman's detention. 25 years later, the egg has not hatched into what it once promised. But it has not broken either. It sits on a shelf in Diamond Bar, California, still waiting. Newegg did not lose to Amazon. It lost to the decision that enthusiasts were a market to extract from, not a community to serve. If you built a PC on Newegg, drop a comment below. Tell us the year, the build, and whether you would order from them again. The people who use these tools know more about what was lost than the people who sold them. Subscribe to join the archive here at Tech District. We have the story of another American tech empire coming next, and you will not want to miss how it ends.